Okay, well, thank you all for being here. Welcome. So we have our esteemed panelists here. I am going to introduce them to you very shortly, and then they can introduce themselves more extensively. So our panel today is called Strengthening the QIST Innovation Ecosystem, or Quantum Information Science and Technology Ecosystem. And I'm just going to go straight and introduce the panelists here. We have Dr. Anna Ambrozaite from the UK Science and Technology Network, the British Consulate General in Boston and Director of US East Coast. And we have Dr. Lincoln Carr from Colorado School of Mines, Professor Lincoln Carr. And we have Zia Mohammad from Amazon Web Services. I guess we'll just start by just asking you to maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just jump into some questions that we have prepared in advance. So maybe Anna, you can start.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Mohammad, also for moderating this. We've been working all together, actually, quite a lot in the science diplomacy field, so you'll notice it that we know each other. Myself, Anna Ambrozaite, as Mohammad mentioned, and I'm currently based in Boston at the British Consulate General there, and I'm the head of the science office there, so I cover Boston, New York, Atlanta, and Chicago, so East Coast. Covers a lot in this regard. And my background itself is not in international relations. I have a PhD in chemistry and then developed the Science Diplomacy Initiative at Johns Hopkins University, which is all then growing nicely. And this is why we're here today.
Hey, everyone. I'm Zia from Amazon Web Services. We have a product called Amazon Bracket. Its goal is to democratize access to quantum computing. So we provide individuals such as yourselves and individuals around the globe access to different types of quantum hardware, as well as some associated software frameworks, such as Unitary Foundation. So glad to be here. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. I believe I did promise drinks, so I guess I'll have to follow through on that. Yeah. My name is Lincoln Carr. I'm a professor of quantum engineering and physics and actually applied mathematics and statistics. I've been in quantum information for about 25 years. In the government side, I was a Jefferson Fellow and an NBC Science Fellow at the U.S. Department of State. On the industry side, I serve as Science and Policy Advisor for Elevate Quantum, which is the Department of Commerce EDA tech hub for quantum in the United States with over 120 quantum organizations based in Colorado, New Mexico, and Wyoming. Love to talk anything quantum with any of you. Feel free to ask me hard questions. I love those.
Okay, excellent.
Oh, you have that.
Hold that,
so,
yeah.
Good.
Okay, well, thanks very much for telling us about yourself. I just want to say, we all know this year is the International Year of Quantum, and it just speaks to how global and in importance this field has become, and we can see that now we have interest from not just scientific institutions and academia, but from policymakers to industry and venture capitalists, and everybody wants to now be part of this field. And so it's really important to understand what are the drivers of innovation and how can we improve this ecosystem. So we have representatives from public sector, academia, and industry here, so hopefully we'll cover a broad range. I will start with a question here. Maybe something that is not too difficult. So what is an example where academia, government, and industry have successfully worked together in quantum, and how can we replicate that? And I'll start with Lincoln for this one.
Great. Thanks so much, Mohammad. I mentioned Elevate Quantum. I like that organization because, first of all, it has the state and the federal government working together. So Colorado state government has over $1 billion in loan guarantees for startups. It addresses the issue of getting a startup off the ground with a very low volume fab before you go into industry, but much larger than academic fab. And then it really sews together the academic system throughout Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. Those are a lot of different competing parties. Over 40 companies are involved, many of them now quite successful. Maybell in particular is on our board. Maybell provides the dilution fridges that are they're only US manufactured dilution fridges, and those are essential to cooling many kinds of quantum systems. And I think they went from something like 10 to 100 employees, over the last 18 months. So this is really exploding, and I think that's an example of this kind of close relationship. Now, it comes out of this historical relationship with JILA, which was a joint institute between the University of Colorado Boulder and NIST. And so that's another kind of collaboration that happened that led to these startups. So this triple helix is, I think, essential to success in quantum and other areas of critical and emerging technology.
Great, great. Do any of you want to add to that, or your own examples?
Yeah, I think two come to mind. So being in industry, it's really important, especially in the early days of emerging technology, to partner with both academia as well as public sector. And two examples come to mind. On the academic front, AWS has a very close partnership with Caltech. And so the folks at Caltech are actually part of our hardware engineering group, where we're actually building quantum computers at Amazon. And so that's an example of how industry is reaching into academia, where all of this R&D happens, to get some of those resources and thought leadership to help build actual quantum computers. I think a public sector example that comes to mind is actually in the UK, Amazon works with the National Quantum Computing Center, NQCC. And so the idea behind that is a lot of countries around the globe in public sector are investing heavily in their own national quantum computing initiatives or quantum hubs. And so Amazon is working with these guys to potentially provide that access, that hardware access to quantum computing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And chiming in here, thank you, Zia. You were about to mention what I was going to say. So good, obviously, that you know all of that. But from the UK's perspective, we have a lot of quantum technology hubs around the country. And one of the examples within the UK would be the Quantum Communications Hub, for example, led by the University of York. And that's where the triple helix that Lincoln was mentioning nicely is really coming to play, where you have the government, right, industry, and academia working together to advance like the specific aspect of quantum communications pillar of the initiatives that we want to do. More recently, actually, this week, we have something called a Stanford and North California and Scotland initiative, and that is based on photonics, which is something that acts as this nice photonic bridge between the UK and then California, and that's also fostered by the UK Science Technology Network that I'm part of, and then we also have industry partners and academics as well. So.
Okay, great. So maybe going into that or related to that question is what and where are sources of major innovation power in quantum science and technology, and how can we have more of them to accelerate this ecosystem?
We need entrepreneurs. We need entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Entrepreneurs?
Yeah. And we need to educate entrepreneurs. Of course, entrepreneurs may operate in startup mode where they start their own company, but they may become leader of a new group in a large established company like IBM or Amazon, and they have to be ready to fail 9 times to succeed the 10th. We were talking about this over lunch. My students, when they take a test, they're not going to aim to fail the test 9 times so they can pass the 10th. Yeah. So it's a whole different mindset. So I think that's a real source of innovation is entrepreneurship and teaching our students entrepreneurship. Now, universities like Stanford are very good at that, actually, but most U.S. universities are not, including mine. We're working on that ourselves. There's a lot of universities abroad that are incredibly good at this, and I'll just mention one is KTH Innovation in Sweden. That's a great example to look at, but there are many others. And part of my job when I was with U.S. government was to look into exactly those systems and try to replicate them here, which we're now working on. So teaching people to fail and to learn from their failures.
Right. Yeah. That's excellent. Okay. Well, what are your perspectives, maybe from public sector or industry?
Yeah, so I think for us, it would be the centers of doctoral training, for example, that we would want to highlight. And that's actually, we have 5 of them for focused on quantum. And the UK has the National Quantum Strategy, right? And there's actually a goal of having 1,000 PhDs in this over the next 10 years. So we're trying to really use these centers for specific training purposes and have a national effort, basically, united together to do that.
So pumping out more,
yeah,
more
exactly.
people just trained in with PhDs.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
I think adding to the point about having more entrepreneurs, you know, it's hard starting something, and trying to have like some type of a safety net or creating that environment where you can try things out is really important. And so, you know, whether that's funding that comes from the government or nonprofit organizations or cloud providers where they're providing credits for folks to actually, you know, try out these ideas is super important because, you know, to Lincoln and Una's points, yes, we need entrepreneurs, yes, we need these centers, but it's also about providing them that safe space, for lack of a better word, for them to, hey, here's some access to funding, go try it out. You know, if it doesn't work, well, you know, at least you tried and you still have access to some capital to actually go and try it again. So just wanted to add that part on.
So I guess just to follow up on that, what sort of safety net or, you know, de-risking mechanism exists for this type of activity?
Yeah, I think,
you know,
no, great question. So I think, like, you know, especially in quantum computing where, you know, it's compute intensive from the classical point of view, or it's compute intensive from the quantum hardware point of view, you know, at least in the private sector, companies like Amazon, Google, IBM, all of the major cloud providers do offer, you know, whether it's researchers, public sector employees, credits that they can use towards accessing this compute resource or these compute resources. And I think that's just one blocker that essentially gets removed. You know, when you're thinking about, hey, if I'm an entrepreneur and I want to start something, one of the first things that comes to your mind is, okay, how am I going to pay for this? You know, what's the idea? If I have my idea, how am I going to fund it? And just having an initial set of, whether it's credits or a mechanism for funding to create that prototype that you can show around to friends or investors, I think is super important. Because if you don't have that mechanism, then you might not have the chance to get started. You might have to use your own personal capital. And so I think it's really important to have these as well to enable the innovation ecosystem.
I remember you mentioned something very interesting about Google, that, you know, people at Google are encouraged to somehow start you know, getting into entrepreneurship and doing their own business, but, you know, if they fail within a year, they still have their jobs, so they can go back to Google. I guess that's what I understood from that. Interesting, very interesting. Perhaps not every company is able to afford something like that, but I think it's an interesting driver for entrepreneurship. Okay. All right. So. Again, somehow related to this topic is another question here. How do we build and retain talent that spans quantum education, policy, and diplomacy? Because you know, now, as we can see, we need people to be trained, or not in every one of these domains, but at least beyond just their, you know, niche, you know, focus, whether it's academia or policy or whatever. How do we retain talent? And also, I guess, encourage them to broaden up a little bit and get more involved in some of these other types of activities.
Colorado offers a science and engineering fellowship. Many students at Colorado School of Mines do this fellowship as a part of even their undergraduate degree, and some graduate students. Yeah. And I think every state should do that, actually, because I think a great starting place, the federal government's fine, but very large and complex. And in a state, you have a chance to really get to know some of the key people quite easily, especially in the smaller states. So I believe state-based initiatives that offer such fellowships at the state level are the most effective for younger students. Then once you get a PhD, it's totally appropriate to go for a AAAS fellowship in the United States and to serve all across the federal government. But you don't have to wait until then to do it, so I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, okay, interesting. AAA.
And then you're the expert in this, actually. I don't even know what
Yeah, so just to, again, highlight the Centers for Doctoral Training, and that's where people can get multidisciplinary skills, let's say courses, and also real-life experience in these fields through the industrial partnerships that exist there. And what, for example, is happening is that, it's basically important to grow the domestic supply of knowledge and talent by enabling these kinds of, partnerships with industry and academic opportunities, but also using the international networks to expand basically their horizons so that you're able to tell the students, okay, you can go and, explore what Amazon is doing, what is Colorado doing, and having basically that global network knowledge exchange and knowledge diplomacy is really important.
Which is something that you clearly demonstrated during your own time at the university, Johns Hopkins University.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And can I just add to this? I mean, Ona in particular is quite fearless, right? And so, teaching students that they actually can engage with upper administration at the university to create something new that, in fact, at any university, administrators are super excited when students come forward with a new idea that they might even be able to afford, that would improve the visibility of the university, contribute to the state and the country. I mean, that's something we can teach our young people. I think they can learn this through industry, and I wanted to mention one other thing, which is industry subcultures, which I don't know if you're going to get to, but when students do internships, especially if they do internships in different companies, they learn these different subcultures. It's incredibly important to communicate, among industry communities, and such a person can be another kind of bridge. It's not only between nations. Right. After all, large industries are sort of their own nation states these days, right? We mentioned Google recently. So, yes. So I think, giving that kind of educational opportunity to students is a lot more useful than taking a science and diplomacy class from Professor Carr, which, yes, I've taught. But I recommend actually they do these things. I think they're more impactful. Yeah. Good. You're good. Okay. Okay,
great. Thank you very much. Let's see. Now, this is a slightly different area. This is about partnerships and competition. The question is, how can we balance international competition with the need for cross-border partnerships? And do we need to tilt the playing field more towards partnerships and away from competition, perhaps in this particular field, or not? So, anyone?
Yeah, I think in quantum, to my earlier point, a lot of countries around the world are trying to create their own national quantum initiatives and investing heavily in that. And so, for example, in Finland, you see the rise of IQM, which is a domestic Finnish hardware manufacturer. And so, at least on the AWS side, through our Amazon Bracket service, we do have a partnership with IQM because, a lot of folks who are in the EU want access to EU hardware. And so giving them those opportunities is pretty important. And to answer your question more directly, I think the focus should be on partnerships, right? Especially in emerging technology such as quantum. You need partnerships not only between public sector and private sector, but also within companies across private sector. Because when you're trying to nurture this field where, workforce development is top of mind, and the technology in and of itself, at least on the hardware layer, is still developing, and their software approaches, it's really important for people to really come together and try to advance the industry as a whole. And then as it matures, you can diverge from there, et cetera. But it really needs to be a collective effort internationally and in the private sector.
Is that something that you see happening, say, at Amazon?
Yeah, so like, for example, IQM is one of the partners. IQM. Yeah, okay. Where we're working with some folks in the EU.
Okay.
Yeah, I can chime in. So the UK is part of the European Quantum Flagship Initiatives, for example. So there's a lot of these multilateral and bilateral partnerships with the US, for example, Japan. But the point is, we won't belabor this, but everyone says we need to collaborate. Obviously, we do, especially in the quantum computing direction of it, because we're still at the pre-commercialization, pre-commercial stage of it. But I think the important bit is basically understanding how do these international agreements, which we'll talk about in a different panel later today on the main stage, how do you then implement them, and how do you do so that it benefits the national, for example, policy or strategy, but that whole ecosystem. So, we talk about this, international collaboration, which is great, but then how do you move from having an agreement the words there to an actual
Is
implementation.
that moving from policy into diplomacy?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Did you want to say anything? No? Okay. Okay. So next question is, what is the biggest bottleneck in moving from theory or lab experiments to real-world impact, and who's best positioned to solve this?
Take this one.
Yeah. Yes.
Quantum engineers. Quantum engineers.
Systems engineers.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, I'm a physicist, and even worse, I'm a theoretical physicist, So, the things that we make, they work once barely and get us a really high-profile publication, and they really never work again.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
making things that are robust and reliable and can go into space and, be deployed in defense and be deployed in industry to discover resources, that kind of thing. I mean, this is the job of engineers, and they're really, really good at it. So, you have to lower the barrier to entry for people who are not physicists, who are not even mathematicians, into quantum mechanics. And so we have succeeded to do this with quantum computing. For example, at Colorado School of Mines, we have a quantum engineering master's program, and this program is majority non-physicists. Every class we have, majority non-physicists. People from the military coming back to get re-educated, people from electrical engineering, people from material science, people from chemical engineering. Yeah. We have totally failed to do this in the area of quantum that's actually working right now, and that's quantum sensing. So no one knows right now how to educate in quantum sensing so that all engineers can get access to it. And how crazy is that? Because engineers are actually highly educated in sensing, but to get them into quantum sensing, we take them all the way back to basic physics and all the way back around to get this tiny little add-on, right? Yeah. So that's a problem that I'm personally working on together with colleagues at MITRE and UC Davis. I've been consulting with Boeing and Inflection and others on how to do this properly. We have a joint meeting coming up with Lockheed Martin. It's an unsolved problem. Same on the communication side, actually. So only in quantum computing have we succeeded. So we need more engineers. We need to get them in sooner, and we need to not get them, with respect to your doctoral programs, we need to not get them all PhDs, but they need to have, quantum engineering minor or something like that as undergrad, and they need to have, or maybe even a bachelor's degree in some broad degree that includes quantum in the title, and then a quantum engineering master's, which is pretty broad, with industry internship. So that's the key to make that transition on that side. The other side is the pre-college part, or the K through 14 part, and this is the technical training. Okay, and so it needs to be accessible to people going through community colleges to learn enough as a technician to work in quantum companies. The majority of people in quantum companies do not have PhDs, actually, when you look at it. So making that work is a really important point of Elevate Quantum, and so I threw my weight behind Elevate Quantum personally, not because I'm in Colorado, because they're solving exactly that problem with real technical training programs. And I'll just highlight here, Front Range Community College within Colorado. There are others around the U.S., very few that do this. Every American who wants to contribute to this area of tech should have a chance to do so, even if they choose not to do a 4 or 6 or 8 or 12 years of extra education past high school. So I personally feel very strongly about this. So quantum engineering and quantum technicians would be my answer.
Okay, very interesting.
I talked a lot. Does someone else want to say something? No. I really care about this. Okay.
So I guess
it's good to have passion.
Yeah.
A follow-on question, because you mentioned in quantum sensing this hasn't really
totally not
happened.
solved. No.
Is that because when we talk about quantum sensing, it's a much broader field than say quantum computing? Quantum sensing is like many more technologies involved in than quantum computing.
Quantum computing is also broad. It's just that, no offense to my industry colleagues, they're chasing a particular tree in a very large quantum forest. It's a very big and important tree, but there are many other trees. But yes, as far as the industry implementation of quantum computing, it's narrower. Quantum sensing, the difficulty, it's an educational difficulty that you have to work with what's called continuous quantum variables. I'm sorry if this is too technical for some people in the room, but discrete variables, is a qubit, a 0 or a 1. It's a generalization of a bit. It's like discrete math. It's the easiest kind of math. So once you get into continuum math and continuous quantum variables, it's actually quite difficult to teach and not make it a physics program. And so it's an educational strategy issue. With the quantum computing, we used to teach quantum physics like you have to learn the hydrogen atom and you recreate the 100-year history of quantum. It's now the 100-year anniversary, 2025, right? And then maybe you learn about entanglement, at the end. And now we turn it upside down. So we need something like that for quantum sensing. And I don't know what the solution is. By the way, someone in this room might be looking at me saying, oh my God, I know the solution. You guys don't know? Let me tell you. Please come up and tell me. I'll be happy to implement it and put your name on it. It'd be great if someone else solved this. But it needs solving, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so this question is, I think, probably best suited for Ona. What role can global science diplomacy play in strengthening the quantum ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think we kind of touched on it already
Right.
when, we're chatting about the international collaboration, right, that we need to do that to make things happen. We hear multiple times, different countries give the updates that we cannot do it alone. But specifically about science diplomacy, and for those maybe in the room, you might not know about this field as much, but it's where the worlds of science and diplomacy collide, so you can engage with diplomats if you're a scientist and vice versa, so you can get expertise accessibly, available to you based on the topic that you're focusing on. Why science diplomacy is beautiful, I think, is because it can enable this, neutral ground, basically, for conversations that otherwise would be tricky to talk about. And having this basically platform, science sort of gluing the countries around a specific issue that's being considered is really powerful. We've seen it happen throughout the history, and personally, why I chose to work for the UK Science Technology Network is because it has been deploying science diplomacy around the world since 2000s. And, they have, for example, experts that are embedded within the embassies, within the consulates. I'm at a consulate, right? And I can use my scientific background to actually inform how things are happening, right? So you can be a scientist in a diplomatic environment, to say. So maybe that answers your question or not, but.
And you're not a diplomat in the traditional sense,
right.
But you are, I guess, already kind of, moving in that direction.
Yeah, so, we say we're science diplomacy practitioners, so people just say science diplomats, and, that can mean multiple things, right? Where you can be, like myself, a scientist in a diplomatic environment leading, let's say, a scientific office, like I'm doing in Boston, and then vice versa, a diplomat that focuses, for example, on tech issues, science tech innovation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a two-way path.
I'd like to add something to this.
Please.
Yeah, so I got a master's degree at CERN. Maybe you guys have heard of this small lab. It's actually the largest lab in the world. I'm going to translate its name into English. It's the European Center for Nuclear Research. It was formed after World War II. Just imagine an international collaboration forming a center for nuclear research right after the U.S. dropped the bomb, right? Mm-hmm. So what an incredible place for diplomacy, for different scientists to come together. When I was a master's student there, we had, Serbia and Croatia working together in our collaboration. And looking at my age, you may imagine they were having some difficulties at the time. And they worked together, So those kinds of collaborative environments, those large labs, whether it's open source kind of quantum computing, or it's a Center for Nuclear Research, or a fusion facility like ITER, I think those have an incredible contribution to world peace. And I believe that science can personally contribute through those environments by knowing people and knowing how they work and knowing how the communities work. And we've always had Russians there, I guess up until possibly quite recently, unfortunately. But I think that's a very important point through the whole Cold War. We still have Chinese there. And I think that, we need these kinds of environments to succeed. I feel strongly about this for humanity, so I hope I'm not overstating the case. But I like CERN as an example. Yeah.
That's an excellent example.
And do you want to say something? No? No, but just to highlight, in the spirit of that, actually, we have launched, just so people are aware, the Science Diplomacy Grid. So that happened on Monday, actually, during the pre-event to the Quantum World Congress. So that is the platform globally that we're launching and trying to get everyone on the same page. So do talk to us. CA is there. What is there?
Tell us more about the website and everything.
So the Science Diplomacy Grid, it's completely new, and it's the global science diplomacy platform where you'll be able to access, as a one-stop shop, the experts in different areas of interest, areas of focus that we care about internationally. So these topics do resonate with the communities that we're part of, so they really reflect the current state of science diplomacy right now. One of them being quantum, right, obviously. So we have a quantum computing aspect that we want to highlight. And these pieces are described by experts in the field, and the blogs, for example, that will be published for science communication purposes, they will be refined by collaborating with experts in industry. So Zia, for example, is working on a quantum computing article with someone from Germany who's a postdoc, right? So getting that early career stage input as well, which is really important to make sure that the threshold for people to get engaged in the science diplomacy grid is as low as possible. And then what else did we do? We do events, so keep an eye out for those. But overall, we really want to make sure that we get credibility, we earn the trust of the readers of today and tomorrow, like Zia nicely said, at all levels of knowledge and expertise.
Okay, great. Yeah, please check out this this new initiative online. Okay, so it's 2:45. I don't know if we still have time.
You're out of time.
Are we out of time?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, I want to thank our panelists. I think this was a very interesting conversation. Thank you very much for your perspectives. And yeah, please, round of applause for the panel. Thank you.